Ahoy everyone, Tightrope here, and in this video we're doing a deep dive into the Australian Defence Battlegroup for the British Forces, breaking down all the different units and abilities and providing some build orders towards the end. Starting out with the Australian Light Infantry, you can unlock, then call them in immediately, and they cost 300 manpower and 8 population. The Aussies have 100 health each and cost 28 manpower to reinforce. They have a 1.5 capture rate and a 1.25 decapture rate, making them the best unit that the British have for capturing territory. And at Vet 1 they gain a bonus, going up to 1.75 capture and 1.5 decapture. Looking at their damage profile, they do about 50% more than a section up close, but are weaker from 22 range onwards. They also have 75% moving accuracy, so are solid at running and gunning. Looking at their early game matchups, they beat Grenadiers up close, but lose to them near max range. And against DAC Panzer Grenadiers, it is very even point blank, with Aussies having the edge from 8 range onwards. But if they had the combined arms bonus, now the Panzer Grenadiers would be marginally favoured at most ranges. Australian Light Infantry have the scoped Lee Enfield rifle upgrade, which unlocks when you get platoon command posts and costs 80 munitions. This gives them 3 scoped rifles and increases vision range by 5. The scoped rifles boost their performance a lot in the mid to long range, and have 75% accuracy against units in cover, compared to the usual 50% for most small arms fire, making them good at longer range cover-to-cover firefights. Though be aware that the scoped rifles only have 50% moving accuracy, so they are slightly worse at run and gun in close range. The Aussies have 3 weapon slots that are completely filled by the scoped rifle upgrade, but if you chose not to get that upgrade, they could be pretty strong with something like triple bars dropped by a USF teammate with ranges. Note that once you have filled one weapon slot, you can no longer get the scoped rifle upgrade. Australian Lights have no grenade or anti-tank grenade, so they are vulnerable to vehicles. However, they can construct anything an engineer can except for mines, including their unique structure, the Sangar Wall. This is basically a 4-segment long sandbag with wire on the other side, and takes 20 seconds to construct. The wire on it cannot be crushed by light vehicles, but the Sangar Wall can be crushed by units like medium tanks. The Sangar Wall has 400 health and 35 armor, but unlike other sandbags, can be targeted with attack orders. It has a target size of 20, so it is quite easy to kill with an anti-tank gun from long range. Australian Lights have the Sharpshooter Ability, which costs 35 munitions. It deals 60 damage to 1 infantry model, and it has 100% chance to land on and does full damage to units in cover, like a sniper. Also like a sniper, Sharpshooter is not guaranteed to hit when used on a retreating unit. And when it does land, the damage is reduced by the retreat bonus. Unlike with most abilities, Sharpshooter targets the specific model that you click on in a squad. So in an engagement, I would suggest targeting a model towards the back so you don't overkill an already weak model and waste damage. This specific model targeting function does not work at the moment on team weapons. Be aware that Sharpshooter has a minimum range of 10, so trying to target an enemy model that is further away may allow you to still use Sharpshooter in a relatively close quarters engagement. Sharpshooter can't target vehicles or emplacements. It also can't target infantry in open-top transports like the 250, though it does look like you might be able to by targeting the icon here, however it doesn't work. Sharpshooter also can't target infantry that is tank riding. Sharpshooter has 2 penetration, so it is guaranteed to damage infantry that have armor like Guastatori or Stormtrooper. Sharpshooter applies a 20% received accuracy penalty to the targeted squad for 5 seconds, making them noticeably easier to hit. And the Sharpshooter ability improves as the Australian Lights vet up. At Vet 1, it also slows the target by 25% for 5 seconds. But this slow does not apply to retreating units. At Vet 2, Sharpshooter will always kill the targeted model, except on retreating units. Unlike with the other 2 stars, the Vet 3 bonus on the Aussies is not isolated to the Sharpshooter ability. When they land a shot on a model that is below 50% health, they have a 5% chance to instantly kill it, regardless of how much health was remaining. So let's see how they stack up in the late game Vet 3 versus Vet 3 engagements. Against Afrika Korps Panzergrenadiers close range, the Panzergrenadiers won 100% of the time with around 1/3 of their health remaining. Moving over to a long range cover-to-cover engagement, now this is close to an even matchup. Up against 6-man Arillery with the Braider, the Arillery are favoured to win with around 1/4 of their health remaining. Up against Arillery long range out in the open, the Arillery are favoured to win with around 1/4 of their health remaining again. Putting this long range engagement into cover now, this makes the Australians favoured to win with under 1/4 of their health remaining. So you can see the effect of that scoped rifle upgrade against cover here, combined with the slower paced engagement, providing more opportunities for the Vet 3 crit to go off. Moving over to Wehrmacht, starting out with Grenadiers, mid to long range out in the open, the Aussies thrash them with around 2/3 of their health remaining, so you don't even need to lean on that extra accuracy against cover of the scope rifles in this matchup. Up against Wehrmacht Panzergrenadiers who are closing the distance against Aussie Lights who are sitting behind heavy cover, the Panzergrenadiers win comfortably with around 2/3 of their health remaining. But in the same scenario, if I use the Sharpshooter ability on the Panzergrenadiers as they are closing in, the Panzergrenadiers are still favoured, but not by nearly as much. Up against their closest cousins, the Recon Package Jaegers, out in the open, mid to long range, the Jaegers win with around 1/3 of their health remaining. Repeating this engagement, but now cover to cover, and I even put the Infantry Training Centre upgrade on the Aussies this time around, the Jaegers still won by a similar margin. Remember, the Jaegers also have good performance against cover with their scope rifles. And finally, up against Stosstruppen, long range cover to cover, the Stosstruppen win with around 2/3 of their health remaining. Now, in a real game, oftentimes enemies are going to start an engagement with low health, allowing the Vet 3 Sharpshooter to be more relevant than it was in this testing. But I'm still not very impressed with their anti-infantry performance given their drawbacks versus vehicles. And it seems like the Aussies are reliant on using the Sharpshooter ability to get good engagements, which will end up draining your munitions a lot. The 2-pounder unlocks for 1 command point. It costs 220 manpower and 5 population. It is intended to counter light vehicles rather than medium tanks. Comparing it to the 6-pounder, it has lower damage but a slightly higher rate of fire. Testing time to kill on an 840 health bunker, the 6-pounder finished first, giving it the overall DPS win. The 2-pounder has low penetration, meaning it will start to struggle against units heavier than the Whirlwind at long range. But it has the best accuracy of any anti-tank gun, which is helpful against the small target sizes of light vehicles. And it has a slightly wider firing arc combined with very fast tracking speed, making it quick to respond to vehicles entering from the side of its arc, and will be able to stay locked on to rapidly moving light vehicles going through its path. The 2-pounder's Vet 1 ability, Target Weak Point, costs 30 munitions. It has a 10-second duration, during which shots from the 2-pounder are guaranteed to penetrate. On hit, Target Weak Point slows the vehicle by 50% and disables its weapons for 5 seconds. This debuff is reapplied with each shot, and if you time the activation correctly, you can land 3 shots over the target weak point duration. You may also want to consider targeting different vehicles to try and spread around the debuff. At Vet 2, the 2-pounder gains a speed bonus, making it faster than infantry at moving around. Overall, the 2-pounder's raw performance isn't that impressive. The target weak point ability is good, but it has surprisingly high vet requirements, meaning this ability comes online rather late. Competing with the 2-pounder is defensive tactics that unlocks for 1 command point. This allows Australian Lights and Royal Engineers to build the Bofors and 17-pounder emplacements. Both get unlocked once you have platoon command post. The Bofors costs 260 manpower, 35 fuel and 6 population. In the stats it has 40 range, but in-game from the centre of the emplacement it is closer to 46. With 30 damage per shot, 25 far penetration and 35 near, the Bofors is most effective against infantry and light vehicles. But it doesn't compare very well against the Flak 38 of Wehrmacht, which has seen almost no play in the last 9 months. When it comes to anti-air, the Bofors has fast rotation, so it tracks the plane well. However, it took around 4 seconds longer to shoot down a recon loiter than the CMP Polston did. The 17 Pounder Emplacement costs 380 manpower, 45 fuel and 10 population. It has the same damage and accuracy as the towed variant, but slightly more penetration and slightly faster rate of fire. Also, in-game testing shows around 5 extra range. Unlike the towed variant, the emplacement doesn't have an arc of fire. Instead, it functions similarly to the Axis 88mm, where it can rotate and fire without setup time delays. The Veterancy on the 17 Pounder Emplacement is different as well. It doesn't get the high explosive rounds of Vet 1, but at Vet 3 its damage goes up to 280 per shot and it gets a 20% reduction on incoming damage. Against a Nebelwerfer Barrage from 120 range away, the 17 Pounder took less than half its health and damage, so it is reasonably resilient against indirect fire. At the end of this tree is Hold the Line, which unlocks for 2 command points. It costs 80 munitions and lasts for 30 seconds, during which time team weapons, emplacements and buildings take 40% less damage and heal for 4 health per second. 120 health gained over 30 seconds is largely irrelevant for an emplacement. However, on a team weapon, 4 health per second for each model combined with the damage reduction makes them very resilient against isolated infantry squads. So Hold the Line is more suited to a team weapon heavy approach, and you should probably activate it during hectic fights. The other option at the end of Frontline Defenders is Vehicle Over Repair, which unlocks for 4 command points. Once a vehicle is at full health, you can repair it for another 5 seconds to give it 120 extra health. The bonus health is indicated by the white shield icon, which disappears once the vehicle has taken 120 damage. This extra durability can help you keep your high vet light vehicles alive later in the game. Try to remember to over-repair fresh vehicles before they enter combat for the first time. Vehicle over-repair is very good and is one of the main reasons to choose Australian Defence. At the start of the logistical supremacy tree is the CMP supply run, which unlocks for 2 command points. For 125 manpower, you select a munitions or fuel point that is both friendly and connected. Then, a supply truck that you cannot control is dispatched to that point to collect resources of that type. Once the truck arrives at the point, it loads resources there for 30 seconds, then heads back to your base to drop them off. On the return trip, the supply truck has a 56% speed penalty. And do note the truck is slower than a usual CMP with a top speed of 5.5 instead of 7.5. The truck is also fragile with just 240 health and low armor. If the enemy kills the truck, the player that killed it gets 75% of the resources that it was carrying. So defend it well, or do a short and safe trip. However, this ability encourages you to do a long trip, since the further away the resource point is from your base as the crow flies, the more resources it grants to you. You do not get more resources from the truck if the selected point is high resource instead of low, or if the point has a cache on it. I did read a theory on Reddit that crossing territory sectors gives more resources for the same distance travelled, but when I tested that on this custom map I made, that turned out to be incorrect. The truck only gives resources to you, not to the rest of your team. The minimum is 25 fuel, or 50 munitions. The truck always gives 2 times more munitions than fuel for the same distance travelled. And if you go to the most faraway resource point on the 4v4 map Seuss Wetlands, the truck gives 71 fuel. If the enemy decaptures the point you targeted before the truck gets there, the truck heads back to base and drives off map. You do not get refunded any of your 125 manpower, so make sure you hold on to that point until the truck has finished loading on it. Reinforced resource caches unlock for 1 command point. Once selected, your caches have 240 extra health and they cost 125 manpower instead of the usual 200. Alternatively, you could select artillery tripwires, which unlock for 1 command point as well. Engineers and Aussie Lights can construct artillery tripwires, which can only be planted next to friendly territory flags. They cost 20 munitions and are fast to build. When an enemy unit starts to decapture that point, the trap triggers, rapidly launching an artillery shell on the area and firing a flare which provides vision for 15 seconds. The artillery shell seems to target where the unit was a second or 2 ago. So against a Krautschützen entering a point rapidly, the shell lands outside of the circle. Against a squad entering and stopping on the same edge of the circle, the shell tends to land pretty well. But if the squad enters the circle and continues to run to the far side of it, the shell often barely touches them. Due to this, I wasn't a huge fan of these traps overall. Consider combining the artillery trap with the mine on the edge that the enemy is most likely to enter from to slow them down and give the shell a better chance to hit. At the end of the tree is Charged Creeping Barrage, which unlocks for 3 command points. It costs 200 munitions. The barrage drops medium strength artillery shells in a line for around 60 range. Unlike with airstrafes, the enemy can't see which direction the artillery shells will be heading on the minimap, so it is more difficult to dodge. It starts off slow for the first 5 or so shells, but then it starts hammering down. The Charged Creeping Barrage is effective against infantry, team weapons and emplacements, but not that good against medium tanks or heavies. And finally we have the Archer, which unlocks for 6 command points. It costs 360 manpower, 110 fuel and 12 population. It has 60 range, which is longer than any other vehicle in the game. 240 damage per shot with 300 far penetration makes it very effective against heavy tanks. The Archer is faster at driving in reverse than it is going forwards. No other vehicle in Code 3 works this way. This is because the Archer is unusual. If you look closely, you can see the gun is facing towards the rear of the vehicle chassis. Do note that forward and reverse commands still work relative to the gun direction, so the Archer isn't confusing to use. It also has more armor on the game rear than it does on the front. The Archer has 480 health and relatively low armor, so it is fragile, especially without over repair. It is also slow going forwards, and the Archer cannot shoot while it is moving, so it isn't good at chasing down enemy vehicles unless they have engine damage. The Archer also turns very slowly, so it can be easily outmaneuvered by more nimble vehicles that get in close. The Archer's Vet 1 bonus is called Stabilized Shot. After the Archer has been stationary for 6 seconds, it gains plus 50% penetration and plus 50% accuracy on its first shot. It's important to know that the Archer can pivot on the spot and retain this bonus. The Archer gains different mobility bonuses at Vet 1, 2 and 3, so by the time it is fully vetted, it is more nimble than a stock standard Marder. The Archer is the other main reason to use this battle group. It can really shut down Axis medium and heavy tanks. Make sure to protect its flanks with mines, and try combining it with the Command Steward for spotting and tread shotting. I never found a build order for Australian defence that I felt confident was the optimal. I will begin with a 1v1 focused build. You have your starting Royal Engineer, then go Aussie Lights, Royal Engineer during the Aussie Light cooldown, then Aussie Light again. This gives you a lot of capping power and firepower right at the start of the game. Also more freedom to plant mines to make up for the Australians' shortcomings. Then put down your tier 1 tech. If you are against a DAC player who has gone for an early 250, you could opt for the Dingo, the 2-pounder, or a regular section with the Boys AT rifle upgrade. If you don't need early anti-tank, I recommend a mortar or Vickers depending on how many buildings there are on the map and your opponent's army composition. Then go platoon command, Stuart side tech, Stuart. Depending on your fuel situation and if you have no other anti-tank, you may want to build a 6-pounder before the Stuart. You could also consider sneaking a short supply truck run to your near fuel to speed the Stuart's arrival. The Stuart helps plug the hole in anti-tank that the Aussies have. I was usually going for the commander upgrade since I have 2 engineers to keep it repaired and I like the bonuses it provides to the Aussies plus the vision boost and ability which can combine well with the archer in the late game. However, if you are up against a DAC player who is using the Funkwagen ambush plus incendiary munitions, the smoke can be a real lifesaver for the Stuart. And note that the Stuart self-repair does not trigger the over-repair bonus. From here you need to adapt your build depending on what your opponent is making, but generally I will tick to company command, get a foot guard and a Matilda. I usually hold off on any training center upgrades until after the first or second tank from company command post. For indirect fire, I had more success using 1 or 2 mortars instead of side-ticking to the bishop and delaying my vehicles. For the Battlegroup ability unlock order, early I would float points to have a 2-pounder call-in as an emergency AT option, and usually I would race to over-repair to keep my Stuart relevant for longer. If you are facing a Wehrmacht player with MP40 Greens into Panzergrenadiers, you may want to switch to a Humber early instead of the Stuart to cause more manpower damage, and unlock the Archer earlier to counter the Tiger. Now for a team game build, you have a starting engineer, then go Aussie and tech tier 1. After that's up, get the Dingo and then another Aussie. From here there are a couple options. Go platoon command post, Stuart side tech, then get 2 Stuarts, light vehicle training, then bishop side tech, produce a bishop and stall for the Archer, ignoring company command post. During the Archer stall, add other units as necessary, like a second bishop versus campers, an AT gun if they've got fast mediums, Royal Engineers for repairs, a medic upgraded CMP for forward reinforce and healing, and so on. Alternatively, you could go double Humber and rush vehicle over repair to help keep them alive. This can do major manpower damage early. From here, tech up to company command post as fast as possible, then trade them out for an early foot guards plus Matilda power spike. In summary, Australian Defence offers a fast start thanks to the field presence of Australian Lights, but doesn't offer much else until the late game when vehicle over repair and the Archer come online. Maybe some of the other Battlegroup offerings could do with some buffs. I found the most challenging period while playing this Battlegroup to be from about 6 minutes when the enemy light vehicles arrive till around 15 minutes when your units from company command posts start to hit the field. This seems to be a common lull in the British power level when you aren't using call and tank strategies. My Patreon is at the lowest it's been for the last 3 years, so if you enjoyed this content and want to see me continue making it, I hope you consider coming on board as a backer.